Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile, a podcast for all things gardening. We're back here. This is going to be episode 2. What are we talking about?
Talking about fertilizer.
Fertilizer, nutrients, aka the good stuff. Yeah.
And how they affect soil. So if you listen to our last episode, we talked about a lot of different components of soil. And today we're going to talk about the differences between fertilizers and then maybe how they affect the soil.
Okay.
Because we need these things to work together in order to not be one of those people who can't grow anything.
All right, so fertilizers. How are you going to unpack that? What's the most important things we need to learn, and then we'll just go down from there.
So before we kind of get started about like different types of fertilizers and maybe what we want to look for when we're trying to use one, purchase one, we need to like circle back to our soil talk.
Okay,
and remember that we always need to be testing our pH.
Sure.
And we need to be testing for nutrients because...
Okay. That sounds more complicated than pH.
Yeah, because if we're not testing for our macronutrients, which is, you know, if you go to any store and you look at the numbers on the front of a fertilizer.
Oh, the three numbers.
Yeah, the three numbers.
Yeah, like the 777.
Yeah, so, you know, your first number is nitrogen.
Okay.
You know, nitrogen is green growth.
Right.
Then your second number is going to be phosphorus.
Okay,
which
phosphorus.
is kind of for like roots and like fruit and like flowering. And then last one is going to be potassium, which is like overall health.
Okay.
So those are super important.
So is it like I said, because I've seen the bags that say 777 or something. So that's just kind of a general purpose, just all around fertilizer?
Yeah. So it kind of like in our area, the most common, like on like the independent garden center is 13, 13, 13 or triple 13.
Yeah.
So basically what that tells you is that for every 1 pound of product in that bag, only 13% of it is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
Oh, wow. So it's a little percentage.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a percentage. And that is really important because I talk about that soil test. If we don't know what elements or macronutrients we actually need, we could be adding too much. Nitrogen's used up really quickly, so a soil test could tell us we're deficient or we have too much. So we might not want to add that element. Phosphorus, on the other hand, typically our native soil here is already somewhat high in phosphorus. A lot of times we don't need phosphorus or we need very little of it, and it's used up much slower.
That makes sense because, nitrogen is literally a gas.
Yeah.
Right? It makes sense it would be used up, and then phosphorus is a metal, I think. So, yeah, it makes sense that plants could break things down at a different speed, different speeds, rate, right? Yeah,
and things grow much faster than they do. You know, they're growing more than they are flowering, or something like that. So, and if you add way too much phosphorus, you could be binding up or blocking out other nutrients in the soil. So, I always want to make sure it's important to know that you test your soil.
That makes sense. So the last thing that I grew in my raised bed gardens was okra, right? And I had to read up about okra because that's what you do when you're planting something. You just read the instructions. And I read a lot of like kind of folksy wisdom and stuff like that. And people were like, yeah, okra's going to eat up all your nitrogen, you know. So, and that makes a lot of sense because when I watched them grow, they grew like a foot a day in the beginning.
Rapidly.
Just rapidly, like faster than bamboo. And so it makes sense now that you're saying that it would deplete the soil of that nitrogen because it needs in that phase.
Another component, you know, which we also talked about in our soil discussion, okra is a heat-loving crop. So not only does it grow really fast, it's also growing in one of the most stressful seasons of gardening. Nutrients are used up faster.
Because the heat is also depleting the soil of the nitrogen. So it's like double duty on your soil. Yeah.
When it's really hot, and especially if it's like really direct sun, things break down faster. So that's a component we can talk a little bit more about fertilizer as we go in and why that might affect which one you choose to use.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest things, like for me as a retailer, is people come in and they want to know what to use.
Sure.
So a lot of the older methods are going to be like leaning towards like those what we would call synthetic fertilizer, the
Okay.
triple 13,
Right.
the 12 24 12, or
Like stuff that just comes in a sack,
Yeah.
has the numbers on it. I do have a question about the sack with the 3 numbers. So 13, 13, 13 means that 13% of that bag is going to be each of these. What's the rest of the bag? Is it
it's
just,
just a inert ingredient.
It's just
It's essentially like a carrier.
so it's like dirt itself, I guess, or something.
It's a your synthetic fertilizers are like a chemically manufactured prill.
Okay.
And those prills are designed to break down. Some of them break down quickly, and some break down slowly.
Okay.
And when we're talking about feeding soil for growing like food, we want consistent nutrition. We don't want like just this blast of growth all at one time.
So that's like quick release and
Slow
time
release,
release,
yeah.
slow release. Yeah, okay.
And you couple that with the choice of either organic fertilizers or natural fertilizers, and then you have your synthetics.
Are those words interchangeable, natural and organic? Because I find that the term organic is very confusing because there's a lot of things that are sort of, they all share the same Venn diagram when we're talking about them, but we talk about them in different languages, and then we talk about them all at the same time. So when we're growing food, right, it's still food. When you go in the grocery store, they use a term for organic in a different way than if you're actually using fertilizers and stuff, and they use organic. Everyone's using the word organic in a similar but different way.
Yeah.
So what is the difference in natural and organic?
For me, like in thinking about where I am, it's impossible to be organic.
Sure.
Like, you can't grow organically in a
'Cause
chemical
it's
manufacturing
in Southeast
town.
Texas, yeah.
But so natural to me is the most important terminology.
Okay.
And for me, I like to look at it from just a personal standpoint. I'm going to do everything I can to avoid the use of pesticides,
yeah,
chemicals, or
chemicals.
Yeah, well,
nitrogen is a chemical, so
or we'll say synthetic chemicals.
Okay, there we go. Yeah,
that were made, or created,
or like manufactured.
Yeah.
Manufactured.
We're trying to use things that like occur
right
naturally in nature, or that are maybe byproducts of other things that we can bring in, and we can use those remnants as resources.
Sure.
Kind of like fish turns into fish emulsion, which is
Right.
an awesome organic nitrogen source.
I have noticed that there's some really good, really expensive fertilizers that are like made of fish.
Yeah.
And they smell like it too. Like you open up the bag and it will be these little multicolored balls, but it just smells like fish. And cats go crazy for it. The cat's neighbor like, what?
Yeah.
And they'll be digging in my
Digging
little
in
pots.
there, yeah.
They're like, oh, let me get some of that fish. So
Yeah, your natural or organic fertilizers are going to be made from things like compost, manures. It can be made from bone meal,
yeah,
blood meal.
right, okay.
There's all these different like sources out there that have byproducts or waste.
The stuff that doesn't go in the chicken nugget, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're-
We don't have the bones in the chicken nugget, so let's make fertilizer out of it.
So those natural things are gonna be healthier for the soil. And when you get into those particular items, it also affects how they're released. Most of your natural or organic fertilizers are going to be slow release.
Okay.
A lot of your synthetic stuff, not all of it, but a lot of it is going to be quick release.
It's kind of like it's closer to its elemental form, right? It's like closer to being a thing that releases and something that came from a fish and you're breaking it down. It's still a lot of other things.
And in order for those organic sources to break down, you need microbes. And microbes help have a living soil, which is one of the key components to being successful.
It's all coming together. It's all coming together.
Whereas if you're using a synthetic fertilizer, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that.
Okay.
But a lot of times, especially the quick release, you're giving a quick flash of nutrients, and then it breaks down really quickly, or it moves through the root zone very fast, and then there's no longer that available nutrition. So then the plant's like, all right, like I need more, but it's not here. And with a quick release too, you have more chance of burning something. And by burning, a lot of times what will happen is you put too much.
Yeah.
And then the plant, like, explodes in growth, and it kind of outgrows itself,
Okay.
and it just kind of burns out.
Like it doesn't have all of its support structures and stuff.
The
It's
root
just,
system
yeah.
can't support all this growth that's
Wow.
happening all
Okay.
that fast. So, an advantage and a reason why you see a lot of people moving more towards a natural or organic approach, just because those are the people that said they can't grow anything.
Yeah.
Where you're giving them something that's simpler. A lot of your natural sources are non-burning, so they're not going to break down fast
So
enough.
that means that like it's harder to over fertilize, right?
Yeah.
Right too. So if I take like fish meal, for instance, and I'm just dumping it onto a plant, I can't really like over fish meal it as easy as if I took, let's say, Miracle Grow, nitrogen,
Yeah,
and I'd mix it improperly. Maybe I put 5 tablespoons per gallon instead of 1, and then I just kill everything.
yeah, and it's you'll see like a lot of your synthetic sources. If you look at those 3 numbers, a lot of them like nitrogen, like ammonium sulfate, or what used to be like ammonium nitrate, like 33% nitrogen by volume, 21%. When you get into the organic sources, they're like 10 and under.
Yeah. So it's much milder.
But that doesn't negate the impact that they have
Yeah.
on your garden. It's working differently. They're getting a little bit each day instead of a bunch all at once. A good analogy is like, are you going to eat fast food every day, or are you going to have a home cooked meal?
Sure. Yeah.
What's better for you? So
Yeah. Is ammonia sulfate, is that a fertilizer? Do plants need ammonia?
not necessarily. I mean, ammonia might be needed,
Really?
but that's
Yeah.
the number one nitrogen source in most all your synthetic.
As ammonium sulfate.
Ammonium sulfate.
Okay. That's really weird because every time, so we were talking about cats earlier and the fish and all that stuff. I've noticed when neighborhood cats pee on a plant, it dies.
Yeah.
And that's because cat pee
Ammonia.
is very ammonia. It's like a
Yeah.
lot of ammonia.
So that kind of like really brings me a little farther down the line. So if you all these different types of amendments and fertilizers, they have an impact to the soil
Yeah.
health. So natural sources, oftentimes they work with the microbe system
Okay,
that's in
yeah,
the soil. It's not to say you can't put something incorrectly or put too much of any one given thing,
Yeah.
but typically they're like a building block. Whereas a lot of times the more synthetic approach, ammonium sulfate, some of those are high in salt content. And when you think about
And you don't want salt.
and ammonium,
Yeah.
ammonia, like you said, ammonia, it kills things. So
Right.
you're basically sterilizing. So that microbe population and that invisible web down there, you're doing damage to it. And we need that to be alive.
Because
in
soil
order to have
is
healthy
alive,
soil.
right? Yeah, that's why, what do they call that when the Romans took over somewhere? They salted the earth,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Made sure, they didn't just want to hurt them now, they wanted to also like make sure that their crop wouldn't grow next year, so they salted everything.
Yeah, so you see so many more people going to that like natural organic approach
Yeah.
because not only does it have lower environmental impact or soil health impact, I mean it does have environmental impact
Sure.
too. A lot of your synthetics, especially in a climate where we are, where we get so much water and so much rain all at once, you get a lot of runoff. Well, you have those non-natural ingredients that are running off into
Like-
water systems.
Like the oil on the road
Yeah.
from cars and tires, yeah.
So runoff is a big thing for environmental impact, and
Okay,
it's.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, too much organic matter into a water system is not good either.
No, yeah,
and
no.
there's never necessarily a total positive for everything, but a lot of times
It even comes down to now, municipal water supplies test the water for pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Because we're peeing out pharmaceuticals and it's leaching into the water. There's so much in
Yeah.
runoff now. Yeah.
So it's those organic fertilizers or natural sources are just a way to be more conscious, especially if you're growing food.
Yeah,
Because again,
yeah.
why are we growing food if we're gonna just douse it with a bunch of stuff? We might as well have just went to the store.
Right. What do I need to know in fertilizing something based on the size that it's in, right? So if I have a house plant and it's in a little bitty tiny pot versus if I have a raised bed garden or something's in the soil, do I need to pay more attention to things that are smaller because the plant will eat through fertilizer quicker or...
So smaller containers or just containers in general, you're going to need to feed more.
Okay.
And one important note, like a lot of your synthetic fertilizers that are out there, like say like the triple 13, it'll tell you it's not recommended for container use.
Okay.
because you have such a small amount of soil, and you oftentimes can burn it very quickly in that container.
Because you're concentrating it, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
But you also, in a container, you're going to need to feed more because you're watering more because it dries out faster.
Right,
and then also those nutrients seep downward and they seep right out the bottom. So a lot of times containers are going to need to be fed more. And it really makes it easy with a slow release natural source because you can work it into the top of a pot, and it's going to feed for 1, 2, 3 months depending on what it is and what's in it.
Yeah.
And the same goes for larger areas. It doesn't really matter what you use, but you're really doing it based upon the size of the container or the size or square footage of area. So it doesn't matter.
So the volume, essentially, the volume of soil that something's in makes it more forgiving and less forgiving, essentially. Yeah. Okay, well, that's good to know. Yeah. Maybe that's why a lot of people that say they can't keep anything alive are just having a hard time just because they get tiny little houseplants in little tiny pots.
And nutrients play such a vital role in plants being able to defend themselves, essentially their immune system. So if they don't have an ample amount of minerals, nutrients, micronutrients, and fertilizer or food, they become stressed. When they become stressed, they can attract pests. So that you think about like container plants. Container plants often have more pest problems than things that are in the ground.
Right,
because
I've noticed that.
Because we were talking about those nutrients wash out, so it becomes nutrient deficient. The plant's looking for something that it needs to be healthy and support itself, support its immune system, and it's not there.
Sure.
And just like us, if we're unhealthy or we're missing nutrients, minerals, vitamins, then we get sick.
So what are some of the signs of that? How do I know when my plants need to be fertilized?
There's you can see it by signs of mineral deficiency. Sometimes you have yellowing in the leaves, yellowing in the veins of the leaves. Sometimes you can have just stunted growth where like you have this plant and you're like, man, that thing should be way bigger by now.
Sure, yeah.
And it's not. But then again, if you test your soil at the beginning or ahead, you'd know these things and you'd be eliminating a lot of these problems. But you kind of have to look at the plant, and it's not always going to be easy to tell. But I use oftentimes like those stress factors like pests, especially potted plants. Not necessarily maybe if I was growing peppers in a container or hibiscus are infamous for aphids or mealybugs. And if you really look at the correlation of weather, it's always in the stressful, hot season. Okay. And then, as we said, when it's hot, nutrients are broken down and used up faster.
Yeah.
So that means if there's no nutrients, that means we have a stressed plant. A stressed plant is a target for an insect. So, sometimes pests are a good way to show you that, hey, like, this pest didn't just choose my plant by random. It chose it because
it's all vibes, man.
It's got what I need.
That bug's like, that's the one right there, man. That's the one.
We've done some trials at home where we just focused on feeding a flowering plant and not spraying for pests, and the pests went away over a period of time. And it also supported by not using a pesticide. I actually was able to attract in beneficial predators. I didn't damage anything in the ecosystem of our home garden, and so the problem took care of itself. Now, that problem did come back later on, but it also comes down to as a potted plant, and I didn't keep up with my feeding regimen. And that's where you look at the difference between like granular, pelletized, and like liquids.
Okay.
They each have their place. Like those like dry forms are going to be for longer feeding.
Sure, yeah.
So think
like
of
the stuff you kind of spread around just on top, right? Yeah.
It's like having a buffet set out for you every day. You got food available in the soil pretty regularly.
And like it basically releases every time you water it, right? Because it's on top, and then you're watering it, and some of that water trickles over it and then washes down.
And then you have microbes and bacteria breaking down some of those elements to make those nutrients available. And then your liquid would be more for instant gratification.
Quick
you know?
uptake. Yeah.
Yeah, more like look of it more like a toolkit, or like Batman's tool belt. There's certain elements you can use to target certain problems. Like we could have fish emulsion, where we need a little bit of nitrogen when the plant's first starting to grow. We're trying to get it nice and big so that it will produce more fruit.
Sure.
If we have a seedling or a transplant, we want to have vigorous roots quicker. We might use a liquid seaweed. So there's different elements that will help you, but liquids are going to be faster, like an energy boost or an energy drink, in the people world.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. So you can use them in combination. Like I don't ever think you should have just one or the other. You could get away with the dry only, but for me, I've really found my happy medium by dry fertilizer on a steady regimen based on the size of the area and the recommendations on the product.
Right.
And then using those liquids as I go through the seasons and the different stages of life in a plant.
Okay.
Bloom boosters for when I want a flowering plant to like blossom with lots of flowers. Or I want lots of fruit. Like if I got a tomato plant and it's grown, I want to stop pushing growth. I want to push blooms, fruit. So that's where your liquids really can kind of come into play.
Because they are heavier.
Yeah.
Because the liquids are heavier, right?
And
it makes more available.
They're soluble. They're already broken down, so they're immediately available to the plant.
And they cover like every square inch of the roots, right? That makes sense. What would you recommend for someone starting out? Do you recommend getting soil mixes that already have fertilizer in them, or doing your own mix?
I recommend doing my own mix.
Okay.
I don't like to think that when I see people, you get bags of product that have fertilizer in them already. There's not enough fertilizer in there to sustain the plant.
Because it usually say like fertilizer for 3 months.
Yeah, but
fertilizer for 2 months.
We talked about how heat and sunlight, just because it's in that covered bag, it's been sitting out in the sun, that stuff's breaking down.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
It didn't just say, oh, we're not going to do anything because we're waiting for you to buy me.
Yeah.
Like, no.
And they sit out in a parking lot.
Yeah.
They literally sit out just in like 140 degrees.
The water still gets in those bags.
Oh, yeah.
They still leach out nutrients. So for me, it gives you this false sense of security that, hey, this is going to feed my plant for a long period of time. I'd rather put in...
Economically, too, there's a price difference in those soils that have fertilizer added and the ones that don't.
They're often more expensive.
They are more expensive, and you're like paying for something you might not necessarily even get the full load.
I could buy the best quality soil with no fertilizer in it, like small batch made soils, and put my own fertilizer.
Artisanal batch. Is there artisanal soil makers out there?
There's some fancy ones.
Small batch.
Yeah.
Limited barrel.
But you could buy the best quality stuff you can in a bag with no fertilizer in it, add a quality natural slow release, and come out way better.
I have a question for you now because I don't know what it is. What is a worm casting?
Worm casting is worm poop.
How does it come in? I don't understand. I've just always heard that like worm castings or poop, I guess, is the best fertilizer.
You can buy worm castings in a bag.
It's just in a bag. It's just worm poops.
Yep. It looks like soil. It looks like compost.
Really?
But it's not. It doesn't stink. But it's
worm poop.
Incredibly nutrient rich because little worms like been wriggling through the soil, eating, breaking down matter, and pooping it out and feeding your soil. And when you really look at like why I think natural fertilizers are important, is because all those things help sustain that natural ecosystem. And those natural things like earthworms that are already there. They say, oh, if you dig in your soil and you come up with earthworms, your soil is good. Well, yeah, to an extent, that's a great sign, but that's not all.
Yeah. All right. So real quick, what are some good examples of natural fertilizer you were talking about?
If we want to get specific, like for products, there's really... I'm always like a kind of locale person. I really like to support the people that are around.
Yeah.
And hands down to me, the simplest, easiest, most robust product that I can get my hands on is Microlife.
Okay.
Microlife's a Houston-based company. It's owned by a man named Mike Serrant.
Microlife's from Houston?
Yeah, they're in
big.
Houston.
They're big time though.
Yeah, I mean they're all. I mean they're not huge, but they're all over Texas.
Yeah.
They're great people. They're they preach what they sell. They live it, and they
I like the way they package their stuff too, because it will say like, this is for vegetation and this is for flowering and this is for fruiting. And they do really well to kind of like simplify it.
They also they do keep it simplified because yes, they have a kind of a whole catalog of products, but when you really get down to it, I keep like 3 products at home. I keep their multi-purpose that I use on everything. One of our mutual friends, Mr. Sastry, who is a tree service, he fertilizes his tree clients with Microlife. Oh, wow. I didn't know that when I didn't know he did trees.
He's an arborist.
Yeah, that's how when we connected that we were kind of in the same world. Like he was coming to get that.
Did you know that he has been called into court as a expert witness for a tree case?
No.
Yeah, you should ask about that. That's really
I
good.
will.
Yeah, because he's an expert arborist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. What else? Microlife. That's really important. You know what? You know what? That being said, what should I stay away from?
You really want to like just be able to turn around and look at what's in there. You know, like for me, like Microlife is the greatest example because when I look at it, I can see like bone meal, fish meal. I can see, hey, this is
through there. You're like, oh, I know what that is. Yeah,
I can look on there and it's got billions of microbes packed in there. Then not only does it have,
that's like probiotics.
So we've got soil probiotics, prebiotics. Then we also have things in there to feed those microbes. So we're not only just worried about like the 3 numbers and the minerals. We're worried about, hey, do the microbes have sugars to actually sustain and get established? They have humic acids or carbons. So there's
is that why it's called,
stuff in there.
Is that why it's called humus?
Yeah.
Humic acid?
I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily related.
Put it all together.
Maybe.
No, maybe so. Okay. Well, that's a pretty good overview of what fertilizer is. Is there anything else to add to it?
No, I mean, I really just think you got to find what works for you. I mean, I don't ever think there's a right or wrong product to use, but you got to find one that keeps it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. You know, you go to the store and there's a fertilizer for everything.
There's so much.
That's crazy.
You have a citrus tree fertilizer and a cactus you have like one for every single thing.
And I really think like if I give you one key takeaway to end on, it would be, you fertilize soil, not plants.
Okay, that's okay.
So you're putting nutrients into the soil. You need those microbes and the things in the soil to break it down to make it available to your plant.
We're not directly feeding plants. We're making the soil better for the
plant
plants.
Can't absorb the pellet or the prill.
Okay,
So you're putting it. Plants feed from the soil. We're feeding the soil. We're being stewards of the soil.
That's a really good way to look at it. That's a really good way to look at it. I like the way that this really fits well with soil because it is all tied together. So what's next? What's going to be on the next one?
Number 3, we're going to talk about something a little more basic, but equally important. So if we have healthy soil and we know we can figure out what to feed it and what components go together, we also have to make sure that we have the right environmental considerations when we're planting something. So site selection, sun, shade. Often people think
runoff.
We're going to talk a lot about the sun and people's misconception about what full sun is, because full sun in Southeast Texas is not the same as full sun somewhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We'll kind of talk a little bit about maybe microclimates.
Okay. So
that you can kind of have a better understanding of how soil fertilizer works, and then you couple that with your site selection. It's kind of going to give you like your 3 main components to really get started.
Hey, man, I'm having a great time, and it's going to be good. Come back next time, and we're going to talk about all of those environmental factors.
Yeah. See you next time.